Welcome back to the BookEnds YouTube channel. I'm James McGowan.
I'm Jessica Faust.
Yeah, we had to switch back after the last
We
video.
confuse people.
Welcome back to the channel. Thank you for watching. I don't know what I'm saying. We are literary agents who have taken our popular blog to YouTube to discuss all things publishing. And today we want to talk a little bit about deadlines. These are something that haunt everybody. Everybody. And especially lately in publishing with supply chain issues, shipping issues, you name it. We've all been experiencing a number of delays in the industry, which I'm sure you've all heard, read the articles, saw the videos, everything about. So it led to a large number of viewers on the channel asking how important the deadlines are. Is it okay to miss their delivery deadline? What happens if a cover isn't finalized by a certain date? Why are all of these publication dates that we've been looking forward to changing by weeks or months or so on and so forth?
And when we're talking deadlines, we're talking specifically about deadlines where the publisher is concerned. I know when I sign a new client, a lot of times the first question is, when do I want revisions back? What's my deadline? I personally don't operate under a deadline when I'm working with a client, but obviously when you sign a contract with a publisher, you will.
Yeah, these are specifically production deadlines. And we actually talked a lot about this in our interview with Amanda Jan at BookEnds. If you haven't watched it, you should. Amanda used to work in production. But most of those benchmarks, which we talked about in that video, most of those benchmarks for your book are determined by your delivery date. So
pretty much everything begins with that delivery date you give in the contract.
Yeah, so we're working backwards a little bit, right? We're starting at the beginning. Well, I guess it's not working backwards. We're working forwards. But everyone's concerned about the pub date. So I guess in a way it is kind of working backwards. But if you can deliver your date by January 1st, then we can schedule it for Y publication date. In between that, there are a ton of deadlines. There's deadlines for your revisions, maybe your first, second, maybe your third round of revisions. There's deadlines for copy edits. The illustrator will have deadlines if you're writing an illustrated work. There are production deadlines like first pass, where we get a sense of what the pages are going to look like, all designed and pretty. But then also things like sending it to the printer, receiving books in the warehouse, and then finally, there are more in there, but finally getting it on the shelves. What is your actual release date?
Yeah, so ultimately, just to repeat everything James said, because that's what I like to do. When you sign a contract, part of that negotiation, not the upfront, but part of sort of the final, we're going to go to contract stage, we've all agreed to this deal stage, is your agent will say to you, when can you deliver the book? One of the things I sort of caution against is a lot of authors will say, well, when does the publisher want it by? Personally, you're the one writing the book, you're the one providing the content. I need you to tell me how long it'll take you to write a great book. I sometimes fear that if we say to the publisher, you decide, sometimes we're caught up in, you haven't been given enough time or too much time. So I like to go to the author with that first. At that moment, once that contract is final, the publisher will pick their publication date from that date. So it's typically about a year. So if I say I can deliver January 15th, they will decide the publication date is January 15th of the following year. Depending on the publisher's schedule, depending on when they feel would be the best time of year to publish this particular book, there are some variables in there, but that's give or take. And now we work backwards. Now we work backwards from that pub date and set all of the dates James was discussing of when everything needs to be done by to hit that pub date.
And you won't necessarily have, you most likely won't have all of those dates. You will
because it's really your date that matters first.
Yeah, so those things, that's why I always like, if we ask an author what date can you deliver by, I'm like, what about 2 extra weeks, just to
I do the same thing,
just to give you extra time. The last thing anybody wants to do is ask for an extension. It's not hard to ask for an extension, and most times they're given gracefully, but I would like to pack in a little extra time if we can, set expectations a little further out. If you send it in earlier, amazing. But if you don't, then you had those 2 extra weeks.
And also for authors I've been working with longer and know better.
Right.
Sometimes I'll really go in hard. I'll say, are you sure? because your kid is getting married this year,
Yeah.
and you know that you're going to want to take December off. And aren't you doing that big vacation in the summer? Is that really going to work for you? I
Yeah.
will really push them on it, because it does come, it's about a great book. And if you have a lot going on in your life, it's going to take you a little bit longer to write a great book. And this entire business is about the quality of the book and whether readers love that book. And if you don't feel good about it when you turn it in, that's not good for anybody, but
Yeah.
especially for.
Yeah. And then as you do get revision notes, you don't have the same amount of time usually to revise that you did to send that book in the first place. So you are packing in bigger revisions if you didn't deliver what you feel is your best work into a smaller amount of time. But
Yeah.
also, while there is usually some flexibility in the delivery date, moving a delivery date too far or too much will inevitably create a domino effect where all of those dates have to get changed. Your publication date gets changed. You're throwing books out of a schedule that a publisher has already worked in schedule based on a date that you've committed to. So it is really important to make sure that you are creating a date that's logical, rational, fair, reasonable, all of those things.
And one thing to keep in mind is there are a lot of people involved in this, and a lot of overworked people under tight schedules. So if you suddenly come out of the blue and call your editor and say, I need a 2-month extension on my book, they're likely to grant it. I have rarely worked with a publisher who doesn't grant an extension, because really, what are they going to do?
Yeah, I once moved the book a year. I was terrified, but we did it. I was like, everyone's gonna hate us. No, but we did it.
But keep in mind, now you've screwed up everybody else's schedule, because they already have. So let's say your book is due in September, and they already know they have 6 books due in September. So they're going to have to revise, edit, copy edit, whatever it is on those schedules. But now if you move 2 months, they already had 6 books due in November. Now they have 7 because of yours. And they're not going to prioritize yours because it wasn't originally due in that month. So you might not get the focused editing that you want, because you're now adding to somebody else's plate. And I think that's really important to note, because there are a lot of reasons you don't want to miss deadlines. And one is you want everyone to be able to give your book the attention that it deserves. And by adding more to their plate, they might not be able to. It doesn't mean they don't want to. It just
Yeah.
means they might not be able to now.
And I think we have 2 goals. I think with almost everything in publishing, we really have 2 goals. I think that's to create the best product and to respect everyone on our team's time and work. And I think treating your deadline seriously, meeting your deadline, that is the best way to show that you can do both of those things. And I think that builds relationships as well. And I think not doing that, life happens, and I don't think we're saying that never miss a deadline. Life does happen,
No.
and it is fairly, like we said, fairly easy to move a deadline, but it shouldn't be something that consistently happens.
Sorry, I just had a brainstorm and I'm making notes.
See that video in maybe 6 months.
um, yeah, well, I mean, you meet those deadlines, you make everybody's life easier, and you become a great person to work with. But all of that being said, like you said, life happens. Every single author with any long-term career will need a deadline extension. Every single one of you. And so many of you will come up and say, I always meet my deadlines. I'm embarrassed. Can I really do this? Blah, 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 blah. It happens.
Yeah.
You know, life does happen. Terrible things happen. Great things happen. But it causes us to miss a deadline. And that's fine. You're going to miss a
Also,
deadline. Let's say every 5 to 10 books you miss a deadline.
but also your team is going to miss a deadline. Your editor might
They
not
will.
get you the notes that they promised you based on the deadline, especially now, right? As we're having conversations of workload. People are going to miss deadlines on the team too. Nobody
Yeah.
expects that it never happens. But
Right.
if you want your book to stick to the timeline that's been set out for it, you have to do your part.
Well, and the truth is, if you consistently meet deadlines, and now at book 5, life happens, and I have to call as your agent and say, hey, author is struggling. This is going on in their life. Can we get an extension? The editor is going to great empathy and do whatever work needs to be done to also make this book great, because you are consistently a great author to work with and make their lives easy. Now, when it comes to asking for that extension, I believe the deadline is super important. And what typically happens to an author who doesn't always ask for deadlines is they will call, say, I need an extension, life event is happening, but I just need a week. And no, here's what we do in that situation. We, your agent and you, have a very honest conversation about what's going on and how much time you really need, because we're not asking for a second
Yeah,
extension.
we never want to ask for a second one.
Right. They're now going to reschedule everything based on this. You go in a second time on the same book, you're just going to get moved, because now they don't actually even have faith. And now they're concerned, like, am I even going to get this book? And so then everything is going to shift. And sometimes they'll even pull you out of the schedule and not put you back in until that book is actually delivered, which could delay you months beyond.
And when they're ready to put you back in, they're taking a look at the list that's been filled up in that time that you've not delivered and saying, well, now we have a spot in 2025, right?
Yeah.
And they're
For
not
for what was once a 2023 book is now going in 2025.
They're not looking based on when they contracted that book. They're looking at, as of that moment, when do they have free time in their schedule. So,
and this is a great opportunity to really use your agent.
yeah,
You know, this is really one of the big things that we do, not just to ask for the deadline, but to really have an honest conversation about, listen, I know you think you can finish it in a week, but this is a big job and this is a big life event. And if we need 2 months, let's just ask for the 2 months now. And again, to your point earlier, if the author says whatever time, I will often go back and say 2 more weeks.
yeah.
But I can also have a conversation with the editor and say, how far can we go without pushing it out of the schedule?
Yeah.
How can we make this work together? And the editor is happy to do that and have that conversation, because they also want this to be easy and make it comfortable for you to turn in a great book.
Yeah. So to answer the question, how rigid are deadlines? Fairly rigid, but we have some flexibility.
Right.
So
Right.
meet them if you can, respect everybody's time, make the best book you can. Those are your goals. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. See you back here next time.
Bye.
Peace out.